In the dim light of the hospital room, Oliver slowly blinked his eyes open, a weight lifting as he emerged from a long, deep slumber. The world around him seemed both familiar and oddly distant, like a dream fading in the morning sun. He tried to make sense of the machines that beeped beside him, the sterile scent of the room, and the concerned faces of family he could barely recognize. Recognition dawned on him. He attempted to speak, but his voice faltered, his throat dry and scratchy. A nurse promptly offered him water, its coolness soothing him. "Take it slow," a doctor gently said. "You've been unconscious for quite some time." But there was no time to slow down. Didn't they understand? Oliver knew he had to warn them before it was too late. Gathering all his strength and with a voice that carried the weight of unseen worlds, he murmured, "By next year." He paused, taking a moment to catch his breath. The urgency in his tone was unmistakable. Then, in a statement that silenced everyone, he declared, "The entire country must evacuate." Oliver's revelation about what would happen in the United States in 2026 could easily be brushed off as the delirious ramblings of a man emerging from a 10-year coma. After all, he had been away for so long after that one horrible day. But there was something about his predictions that made people take his words very, very seriously. But before we start our story, smash the like button, make sure to subscribe and hit the notifications bell so you won't miss any new stories. It was exactly 10 years ago when Oliver had been in that harrowing accident. A stormy night, roads slick with rain, and an unfortunate twist of fate had combined to alter the course of his life forever. Everyone had mourned the vibrant young man who was full of dreams and aspirations, thinking they had lost him forever. But against all odds, Oliver woke up, and with his return came a message so unsettling that even the most skeptical couldn't ignore. Because what he claimed would be the United States' downfall had already begun unfolding across the country. Whatever terrifying future he had witnessed, and people were convinced they didn't want to be a part of it. Many citizens began trying to leave the country. They were desperate to escape the grim fate Oliver described. The most astonishing aspect was that for a long while, Oliver's family had little hope of him waking up. Every so often, friends and relatives would gently ask, "How long will you keep this up?" But Liam and his parents were clear. As long as Oliver's heart still beat, they'd never leave his side. For a decade, they watched over him together in the plain hospital room. No matter how tough it got, they never gave up hope, and the hospital staff was heartened to see how loved Oliver was. In the quiet halls of the hospital, everyone spoke of Oliver's devoted family. They believed that even in his coma, Oliver could sense their love and the comforting words they whispered. Day after day, they reassured him, hoping their voices reached his heart. The entire situation was particularly hard for Liam. He used to be the younger, playful brother, but now their roles seemed flipped. Oliver's life had essentially been put on pause, while Liam continued to live his life over the past 10 years. And during every significant moment, his thoughts would drift to Oliver. On this particular day, Liam sat beside Oliver's bed, sharing one of those moments. Within the muted hues of the hospital room, Liam leaned closer to Oliver, sharing whispers of recent heart-to-hearts with his girlfriend Lisa. They had just moved in together and were discussing the next steps in their relationship. Lisa had always wanted to become a mother and felt ready to embark on the journey of raising children with Liam. His heart swelled as he began unveiling this chapter of his life to Oliver. "You'll be an uncle," he murmured, a grin lighting up his face. But just as the words left his lips, a fleeting shadow across Oliver's face stopped him cold. Was that a twitch? An involuntary muscle spasm? It couldn't be. For a decade, Oliver hadn't so much as stirred. Swallowing his fear, Liam rose carefully. "Mom, Dad, come quick," he whispered. His parents rushed over, their faces tense with anticipation. "Oliver, can you hear us? Wake up!" Their voices wavered. Liam quickly fetched a nurse, who checked for signs of consciousness. A faint twitch of Oliver's eyelids. Liam's breath hitched. The nurse caught it too and called for assistance. Within seconds, the room filled with urgency. Doctors, machines, hushed commands. Time stopped. 10 years, and now those familiar eyes stared back at him. Joy, disbelief, and relief surged through Liam as his parents broke into tears. The doctors confirmed he was stable, but exhausted. He needed rest. Oliver soon managed to form words, weak but unmistakable. "By next year," he murmured. The family leaned in, hanging onto his fragile voice. Liam felt his chest tighten. Then came the words that sent a shiver through the room. The entire country must evacuate. Silence fell. Oliver's strength waned immediately, as if he had used every last bit of energy to say those words. His eyelids grew heavy, and he slipped away into unconsciousness once more. The weight of his message settled heavily on the room. Liam and his parents exchanged glances, then turned to the doctor, who cleared his throat. Patients emerging from a coma can struggle to distinguish dreams from reality, he explained, his tone cautious. It's important not to jump to conclusions. Liam clenched his jaw. Deep down, he knew Oliver wasn't just confused. Their bond told him that those words meant something. An unease took root in his gut, refusing to fade, so he waited. Days blurred into nights as Liam remained by Oliver's side, hoping he would speak again. Time dragged, and Oliver remained silent, as if he had poured his very soul into that cryptic warning. But at last his voice, weak yet deliberate, broke through the stillness. He began to recount his experiences. He spoke not of darkness, but of something else, places that felt both familiar and impossibly distant, as if in those lost years he had journeyed somewhere beyond this world and returned with a warning. Liam and his parents exchanged shocked glances, chills running down their spines. How could Oliver have experienced all this while lying in a hospital bed? The room fell into silence as they absorbed his words, disbelief evident on their faces. But Oliver wasn't finished. Taking a deep breath, his eyes filled with sadness, he explained that he had wanted to return much sooner, but was held back by forces beyond his comprehension. He had seen the future, and what he witnessed was alarming. There's a warning that must be shared, he said, voice heavy. His family furrowed their brows, uncertainty creeping in. The room suddenly felt colder. Nurses reassured them that coma patients often describe vivid visions, hallucinations with no logical explanation. Oliver's reaction was immediate. His eyes flared with frustration. I came back to share something vital, he insisted. This isn't just about me. It's about all of us. This is a matter of life and death. Reluctantly, his parents and Liam sat down, letting Oliver speak. Despite his weakness, words flowed effortlessly. When he finished, they sat in stunned silence. Finally, Liam spoke. All right, I believe you. Oliver exhaled in relief, but Liam had lied. He didn't believe the story, but he did believe Oliver believed it. Arguing would only hurt his brother, so he chose to support him. Then Oliver made a shocking statement. By 2026, everyone must leave the United States. He didn't explain why, but insisted the warning be shared publicly. Liam, however, couldn't let that happen. He knew few outside their family would take Oliver seriously. If he spoke to the media, he would be ridiculed. So they promised to spread the message, just not yet. Oliver, still weak, reluctantly agreed. But time was running out. 2026 was just months away, and evacuating an entire country was impossible. Oliver believed the sooner people knew, the better. Unbeknownst to his family, he began secretly reaching out to the media. Though physically weak, he was determined to speak. He contacted major outlets, hoping someone would listen, but no one did. Reporters dismissed him before he could finish his story. Some laughed, others outright ignored him. Each rejection stung, but instead of giving up, Oliver became even more determined. For 2 weeks, his family had no idea about his efforts until a reporter showed up at the hospital. Oliver hadn't attracted top-tier journalists, but he couldn't be picky. He just needed someone willing to listen. To him, this was a step toward reaching the president, but his family saw things differently. The reporter worked for a sensationalist site known for clickbait and exaggerated stories. Liam and his parents feared he would mock Oliver, turning him into a joke. And despite their protests, the reporter insisted on proceeding. Oliver was eager to share his outlandish tale, and the reporter knew a bizarre story could generate clicks. Liam made one last attempt to stop Oliver, pleading with him not to go through with it. But Oliver refused and asked Liam to leave. Reluctantly, he complied. From outside, the family anxiously watched. Oliver spoke passionately, while the reporter jotted down notes, an amused grin on his face. Then something changed. The grin vanished. His pen stilled. He no longer seemed entertained. For several minutes, he just stared, wide-eyed as Oliver continued speaking. Then Oliver stopped, sensing the shift. The reporter looked utterly shaken. But why? What had Oliver revealed? Out of nowhere, the reporter abruptly stood and walked out without a word. Oliver called after him, but he didn't turn back. Liam and his parents froze, watching the reporter's pale, shaken face. "What did Oliver say to you?" Liam asked repeatedly. The only response, "He's right." Confusion swirled in the room. The reporter, still trembling, pulled out his phone. "I need to call my wife," he muttered. As he left, Liam and his parents strained to listen. One sentence sent chills down their spines. "We need to leave the country immediately." Liam turned to Oliver, his pulse quickening. Had they underestimated the gravity of his warning? The reporter had clearly dismissed Oliver at first, so what changed his mind? Liam stepped inside and gave Oliver a reassuring hug. Despite being upset that Oliver had spoken to the media behind their backs, all he felt now was concern. "I want to help," Liam said, "but I need to know. What did you see about 2026? Oliver hesitated, reluctant to burden his family, but he needed their support. Taking a deep breath, he finally spoke. "While I was in a coma, I saw the future. The United States was unrecognizable, engulfed by uncontrollable wildfires. The devastation was beyond anything imaginable." Liam's breath caught. The past few summers had been bad, but when Oliver fell into his coma 10 years ago, wildfires weren't a major threat. Now they were an escalating crisis. The connection sent a shiver down Liam's spine. Every time he tried to dismiss Oliver's visions, a single thought haunted him. What if they're real? As the family debated how to proceed, fate intervened. The reporter leaked Oliver's story, not to a mainstream outlet, but to a doomsday prepper's website. Liam assumed it would be ignored. He was wrong. People took notice. The idea of an impending disaster resonated with those who feared the worst. Within weeks, small but growing numbers began planning to leave the U.S. before summer 2026. Oliver felt it was a step in the right direction, but it wasn't enough. He had only reached a fraction of the population. Determined, he prepared to approach major news networks again. Before he could, a figure from national security arrived at the hospital. Oliver was initially thrilled. Someone in power was finally listening. But the agent's message left him shaken. "If you keep spreading this, you will face consequences." Exhaustion weighed on Oliver. The thought of imprisonment chilled him. Being locked away while the disaster unfolded would be worse than death. His family gathered close, worry etched on their faces. "Don't worry, we'll figure this out," Liam said, though uncertainty laced his voice. Oliver wished he could believe it was that simple. That night his visions returned. The acrid scent of smoke, the blood-red skies, the agonized screams. Every horrifying detail played out again in his mind. He woke with a start, heart hammering. The images burned into his soul. But with the dawn came renewed resolve. He couldn't stay silent, not when lives were at stake. Oliver vowed to keep fighting, to spread the warning until no one could ignore it. The risk didn't matter. As long as he still breathed, he had a chance. And he wouldn't stop until the world listened.